The storm came without warning. Thick black clouds rolled over the small human colony called Haven Ridge, hiding the twin moons behind a curtain of rain. Wind tore across the rocky desert, shaking the thin roofs of the workers' huts. Far from the main colony lights, a single cabin stood on the edge of a wide canyon. Inside lived Ethan Cross, a quiet human mechanic who preferred machines to crowds. He fixed broken shuttle engines, built water pumps, and repaired anything the colony brought him. People said he was a good man, but distant. He spoke little, smiled rarely, and lived alone since the war ended 5 years ago. That night, he worked late in his small workshop, the sound of rain echoing on the roof. A flickering lamp cast a weak light over his tools. He wiped grease from his hands and sighed, thinking about nothing in particular, just the usual silence. Then something strange caught his attention. A small shape moved outside, between the flashes of lightning. At first, Ethan thought it was just a scrap of metal, or maybe a wild animal seeking shelter. But when he stepped closer to the window, he saw it again, a figure struggling through the mud. Collapsing every few steps, he hesitated only a moment before grabbing his coat and flashlight. When he opened the door, the cold wind hit him hard, carrying the smell of wet sand and electricity. He walked out into the storm, boots sinking into the mud. "Hello?" he called out, his voice nearly lost in the thunder. "Is someone out there?" There was no answer, only the rain. Then his light found the shape, again small, fragile, shaking. As he got closer, he saw the truth. It was a girl, but not a human one. She had long, wet hair, a pair of fox-like ears drooping from exhaustion, and a tail heavy with rainwater. Her clothes were torn, almost just rags, and her bare feet were cut from the stones. Ethan stopped, surprised. He had seen aliens before during the war, but never one like her. Her golden eyes glowed faintly, even in the dark, filled with fear and confusion. She looked like she wanted to run, but her legs gave out, and she fell to her knees. He ran forward and caught her before she hit the ground. Her body was cold, trembling. She looked up at him weakly, unable to speak. "Hey, easy," Ethan said softly. "You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you." The girl's lips moved, but the words were broken, like static. Her small translator device around her neck sparked, clearly damaged. She tried to say something again, but only a weak sound came out. Ethan didn't wait. He lifted her gently in his arms and carried her back to his cabin. She was light, too light, as if she hadn't eaten in days. Her tail hung limp against his arm, and her head rested against his shoulder. Inside, he laid her on the couch, near the heater. The warmth of the fire slowly filled the room. He took a blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders. Her ears twitched slightly at the sudden heat. She opened her eyes again and looked at him, still scared. He smiled faintly. "It's okay. You're safe here." He went to make soup from nothing fancy, but warm and gentle. When he returned, she was sitting up, holding the blanket close, watching him with a mix of fear and confusion. "Hungry?" he asked, holding out the bowl. She hesitated, but nodded slowly. Her hands shook as she took it. She sniffed it first, then took a small sip. The warmth seemed to surprise her. She looked up at him again, eyes wide, so she couldn't understand why he was helping. Ethan sat across from her, trying to speak slowly. "My name is Ethan," he said, pointing to himself. "Ethan," she blinked, then pointed weakly at herself. "El Lyra," she whispered through the damaged translator. Her voice was soft and broken, like a song from far away. "Lyra," Ethan repeated, smiling slightly. "That's a nice name." She looked down, clutching the bowl. For the first time, she seemed calmer. The rain outside began to fade, leaving only the steady rhythm of drops on the roof. The next morning, the storm was gone. Sunlight poured through the window, lighting the small cabin. Lyra was still asleep, curled up under the blanket. Her ears twitched every now and then, her tail tucked close to her. Ethan stepped outside to check his workshop. The storm had damaged some of the power lines, but nothing too serious. He worked quietly, lost in thought. He didn't know what to do with her. Aliens weren't exactly welcome here. The frontier colonies followed strict rules any non-human species found outside. Official settlements had to be reported. But looking at her, he couldn't imagine turning her in. She looked too fragile, too broken. When he returned, she was awake, sitting by the fire. She had found his toolkit and was holding a small metal gear, studying it with curiosity. "Careful with that," Ethan said gently. She looked up, startled, then set it down quickly, ears folding back in apology. "It's okay," he said with a small chuckle. "You can look. I just don't want you to cut yourself." Her translator sparked again, letting out a few words. "This make machine." He smiled. "Yes, machines." Lyra nodded slowly, repeating the word. "Machine." She pointed at the broken device on her neck. "Machine. Broken." Ethan crouched beside her. "May I?" he asked, pointing to the translator. She hesitated, then nodded. He took it gently, opened it with a screwdriver, and started repairing the wires. She watched every move closely, fascinated by his steady hands. After a few minutes, the small light on the device blinked green. He handed it back. "Try now." She pressed the button and spoke softly. "Thank you." Ethan, the voice came through clear this time. Hearing her say his name made him smile. "You're welcome." From that day, a quiet routine began. Lyra stayed in the cabin, helping him in small ways. She handed him tools, cleaned parts, and learned words, little by little. She was shy, always keeping a bit of distance. But her eyes grew brighter each day. She didn't talk much about where she came from. Once Ethan asked gently, "Where's your family?" And she looked away. "Gone," she said simply. He didn't ask again. A few weeks later, while buying supplies at the colony market, Ethan overheard two traders talking near a hover truck. "Did you hear?" One said. "Another Foxen village wiped out by pirates." "Nothing left, Foxen?" Ethan asked quietly. "Yeah," the man replied. "Those fox-eared people from the outer belt? The war ended, but not for them. Some say only a few survived." Ethan's stomach tightened. He realized what that meant. Lyra might be one of the last of her kind. When he returned home, he found her sitting near the window, staring at the setting sun. She turned as he entered, smiling faintly. But he could see something in her eyes, a deep sadness, like she already knew. That night, he sat by the fire while she slept. He thought about sending a message to the authorities. Maybe someone could help her find safety. But part of him feared what they might do if they found her. To them, she would be an unregistered alien, not a person. He sighed and whispered to himself, "What am I supposed to do, kid?" He didn't know she was awake, quietly listening. Her ears twitched at his words. She heard the word authorities and felt fear rush through her heart. In her past, authorities meant soldiers who burned her village, took her people, and left her alone. When the cabin went quiet, she stood up and quietly opened the door. Cold wind rushed in, and she stepped out, barefoot into the night. Hours later, Ethan woke up and realized she was gone. Panic hit him fast. He grabbed his coat and flashlight again, running into the dark. The rain had started once more, softer this time, but enough to wash away footprints. He searched near the canyon, shouting her name. "Lyra, Lyra, where are you?" There was no answer, only the wind and the distant rumble of thunder. Then he saw a faint glimmer near the old wreckage field. He ran toward it and found her sitting on the ground, soaked and shivering, clutching a small metallic charm shaped like a crescent moon. Her translator was broken again, and her eyes were full of tears. Ethan knelt beside her. Hey, it's okay," he said, placing his coat around her shoulders. "Why did you run away?" She looked up, her lips trembling. "You send me away," she whispered through the broken device. Ethan's heart tightened. No, I'd never do that." She shook her head. "Humans, take my people." He closed his eyes for a moment, realizing what she must have thought. He touched the charm in her hands. "This was yours?" She nodded slowly. "Mother's, all I have." Ethan sat beside her in the mud. The rain fell softly around them. "Lyra, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you." She stared at him, uncertain. "You're safe here," he said again, more firmly. "No one's going to take you. Not while I'm around." His voice shook slightly, but every word was true. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she leaned against him, tired and weak. Her head rested on his shoulder. He felt her breathing slow down. He gently picked her up again and carried her back to the cabin. The firelight greeted them warmly, and he placed her near it, covering her with fresh blankets. Her tail curled close around her as she drifted into sleep. Ethan sat nearby, watching her, wondering how something so small and fragile could survive so much. As dawn arrived, soft light filled the room. Lyra opened her eyes and saw Ethan still awake, half asleep in his chair. She whispered softly then, "I stay." He blinked and looked at her. "If you want to," he said. Her ears lifted slightly, the faintest smile forming on her face. "I stay," she whispered again, before closing her eyes. Ethan watched her for a long time. He didn't understand why, but something deep inside him felt lighter. Maybe it was the sound of her breathing, or maybe the feeling that, after all the empty years, his cabin finally felt like a home again. Outside, the rain stopped sea. Morning came slowly to Haven Ridge. A thin line of sunlight slipped through the dusty window of Ethan Cross's cabin, cutting across the workbench and the sleeping girl by the fire. Lyra's chest rose and fell softly under the blanket. Her fur-tipped ears twitched at every creak of wood. But she didn't wake. Ethan poured himself a cup of bitter colony coffee and watched her. The small cabin had never looked so alive. Her tools lay beside his, and one of his spare shirts hung from a chair where she had left it to dry. It felt strange. For years the room had been silent, only the sound of machines. Now there was breathing, humming, warmth. When Lyra awoke, she smiled shyly. "Good morning." "Ethan," she said, her words slow but clearer than before. He nodded. "Morning, kid. You sleep okay?" She nodded again, tail swaying a little. "Warm, safe." He smiled at that word. "Safe. Yeah, you are." Days passed. Life fell into a gentle rhythm. Lyra helped Ethan with small tasks, sorting spare parts, cleaning engine filters, fetching water from the purifier. She learned quickly. Whenever he explained how something worked, she listened with wide eyes, then repeated each word until she remembered it. Sometimes she would hum while working, soft tunes from her lost world. The sound filled the workshop like sunlight after rain. Ethan never interrupted. He just listened. At night, they ate together near the fire. She told him pieces of her past in broken human words. Her home on a forest moon, her people who lived in trees and sang stories to the stars. Then her voice would fade when she reached the part about the war. Ethan never pushed her to continue. One night she asked, "Why you live alone?" He looked into the fire. "Because I lost too many friends," he said quietly. "The war took them. After that, I didn't want to lose anyone again." She tilted her head. "Now, you have me." Ethan's chest tightened. He gave a small smile. "Yeah, now I have you." Her ears perked happily and she whispered, "Good." One afternoon, a supply ship landed at the colony port. Ethan rode there on his old hoverbike to trade spare parts for food. He planned to return before sunset. Lyra stayed behind, sweeping the floor and feeding the fire. While she worked, she heard a loud hum overhead, a strange engine, heavier than Ethan's. She stepped outside and saw a gray patrol ship circling the canyon. Its lights flashed blue. On its side were the words Colonial Bureau, Sector 9. Fear froze her. She remembered that emblem, humans in black armor, the same group that once searched her village. She ran back inside and hid behind the workbench. Trembling an hour later, Ethan returned. He saw the ship too, hovering far away near the ridge. His stomach sank. He hurried inside. "Lyra?" She jumped out from hiding and ran to him, clutching his coat. "Soldiers," she whispered. Same as before." He rested his hands on her shoulders. "They're just patrols. Maybe routine check, he said, though he didn't believe it. She shook her head. They find me. Take me, Ethan exhaled slowly. Then they won't find you. He guided her to a trap door under the floorboards, a small storage pit for spare fuel cells. Stay down there if they come. Don't make a sound, okay? Lyra nodded, eyes wide with fear. Minutes later, heavy knocks shook the door. Ethan opened it just a crack. 2 officers in dark uniforms stood outside, rain dripping from their helmets. Evening One said, "We're checking for unregistered alien refugees. Got reports of movement near this area." Ethan forced a calm tone. "Just me here. Been working on engines all week." The taller officer looked past him into the cabin. "Mind if we check?" "Go ahead." Ethan stepped aside. They searched under the bed, behind the tools, even opened storage boxes. Lyra held her breath below the floor, her heart racing. She could hear their boots thudding above her, metallic click of scanners. After several tense minutes, one officer sighed. "Nothing here." Ethan crossed his arms. "Told you. Just a mechanic." The officers nodded and left. The sound of engines faded into the distance. When silence returned, Ethan lifted the trapdoor. Lyra crawled out, shaking. He helped her stand. "It's over," he said softly. She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "You lie for me," he nodded. "Yeah, I did." "Why?" He hesitated. "Because no one should have to live in fear. You deserve better." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. It was the first time she had ever done that. Her voice was small, but steady. "Thank you." He froze, then gently placed a hand on her back. "You're welcome, Lyra." After that night, they stayed even closer. Ethan built a small hidden shelter under the workshop floor, a safe room with air vents and a light. "Just in case," he said. Lyra helped him with it. Laughing softly whenever he dropped a tool, he taught her more human words: sky, home, friend. She taught him a few from her people's language, soft sounds like wind through leaves. When she said them, he repeated, often mispronouncing and making her giggle. One evening, as they watched the sunset turn the canyon gold, she said before, "I have nothing. No home, no hope. Now I have both." Ethan smiled faintly. "You made this place better too." She tilted her head. "Better." He nodded. "Yeah, brighter." She blushed slightly, ears twitching. "Then I stay." "Long time?" "Stay as long as you want." Weeks passed peacefully until the day a message came through the colony network. Ethan's old comm unit buzzed with a priority signal from the Bureau. "Attention citizens of Haven Ridge. Any knowledge of surviving Foxan species must be reported immediately. Harboring one is a criminal offense." Ethan turned off the signal and stared at the wall. His hands clenched. When Lyra entered the room carrying a pot of stew, she noticed his face. "Bad news?" He hesitated. "They're searching for your people again," her tail lowered. "Then I go." "You safe?" Ethan stood quickly. "No, you're not going anywhere." She shook her head. "They hurt you if find me." He stepped closer. "I'll deal with that when it happens." "I'm not losing you." She looked up, eyes shining with emotion. "Why you care so much?" He took a deep breath. "Because you remind me what being human means." For a moment they just looked at each other. The room felt quiet, like the world had stopped. That night, as they sat near the fire, Ethan told her stories about Earth, blue oceans, tall forests, the smell of rain. Lyra listened, eyes wide. "Sound beautiful," she whispered. "It was," he said. "Maybe still is. I haven't been back in years." She smiled softly. "Maybe one day. We go there." He laughed lightly. "You'd like that?" She nodded. "I want to see sky of your home." He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "Then one day we will." 2 days later, disaster struck. A drone patrol scanned the canyon and detected unusual heat signatures near Ethan's cabin. Within hours, a Bureau ship landed outside. Armed soldiers surrounded the area. Ethan saw them through the window. "They're here," he whispered. Lyra's eyes filled with fear. what we do. He handed her a small pack. Go through the back tunnel. It leads to the canyon caves. Stay hidden there until I come. She shook her head violently. No, you come too. I'll distract them, he said firmly. They'll think you ran somewhere else. Tears gathered in her eyes. You promise? I promise. She hesitated, then ran into the tunnel as he closed the hidden door behind her. Seconds later, soldiers burst in. Ethan Cross, step aside. Ethan raised his hands. What's this about? We know you're hiding an unregistered fox and female, the captain said. You're wrong, Ethan lied calmly. There's no one here. They searched everything again, tearing open crates, overturning shelves. They found the trap door, but nothing inside. The captain scowled. If we discover you're lying, mechanic, you'll lose this property. Ethan met his gaze. Then you better find something first. After an hour they left, frustrated. Ethan waited until the ships were gone, then ran to the canyon caves. He shouted softly, Lyra. From the shadows came her trembling voice. Ethan. He found her hiding behind a rock, clutching her pack. Dirt streaked her face, but her eyes brightened the moment she saw him. She ran into his arms. You came, she whispered. Of course I came. They sat by the cave entrance as night fell. The stars shimmered above them, brighter than ever. Lyra looked up. So many stars, she murmured. Each one. Story, Ethan smiled. Maybe one of them is yours. She turned to him. And one is yours. He laughed softly. Maybe they're the same star. She tilted her head. Same, yeah, he said. Because we're looking at it together. Her ears lifted and she smiled. A real bright smile he had never seen before. For the next week, they lived in the caves. Ethan brought supplies from the cabin when it was safe. Lyra helped build a small fire and decorate the stone walls with glowing crystals she found. Despite the danger, they laughed, cooked simple meals, and watched the night sky. One evening she asked, You tired of running? He nodded a little. She looked thoughtful. Then no more run. We find new place far away. Where? He asked. She pointed upward. Other worlds. You have ship pieces. We fix. Ethan blinked. You mean build a ship? She nodded seriously. You fix engines. I help. He stared at her, small, determined, glowing in the firelight. Then he smiled. All right, Lyra. Let's build a ship. It took weeks of hard work. They scavenged parts from old wrecks near the canyon and used Ethan's workshop tools at night when no patrols flew overhead. Lyra learned fast, crawling inside holes, tightening bolts with her nimble fingers. Whenever they grew tired, she whispered encouragement. We finish. We.